Walter. Dr. Walter, thank you very much for being here in St. Peter, in Clearwater, and here at St. Petersburg College, and going through this great process that we're involved with. I know that you've been on a long journey over the last couple of days, and I just wanted to give you an opportunity for some opening comments or some impressions of your visit so far before we get into the questions.
Thank you so much. It is indeed an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today. The last 3 days have been an incredible journey for me. You have wonderful people serving students on all of your campuses, and it has been a fabulous experience getting to talk to the faculty and staff, and particularly the students on your campuses. We concluded our last visit today at the Health Education Center with over 100 students talking to us. Marvelous, exciting students who really care about this college and their education. You are to be commended for the job that you are doing and that your faculty and staff are doing here. And I'm honored to have had this opportunity to spend time with them the last 3 days. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you. As you know, you received some questions from us, 10 questions, and those same questions were provided to the other 3 candidates. And so what we're going to do, we have assigned each question to some different trustees who are going to be asking the questions. And as I mentioned earlier, all of these same questions were asked of all the other candidates, and we may diverge into other areas depending on how some of the responses go. And then at the end of our 10 questions, we may get into some other areas. So we're going to go ahead and get started now then, and Mr. Johnston is going to start off.
We'll just say thank you for being here again. And the first question is, why did you apply for the presidency of St. Petersburg College?
When Dr. Cutler retired, I went in to talk to the president of my institution and told him that I was very interested in applying for this position because I feel that St. Petersburg College is a national leader in what's happening in the community college movement today. I'm very excited about the things that you're doing, not just the bachelor's degree, but your entrepreneurial efforts, your collaborative lab, your connections to the community, and all of the marvelous things that you still have for students, like your arts programs that no one else has right now. At this point in my journey and in my life, I think I am finally ready, after spending 20 years in higher education and working for a long time as a head academic officer. I'm ready for the challenge of leading an institution. And I can't think of a finer one or one that fits my values closer than St. Petersburg College. And that's why I applied for the job.
Mr. Chair, can I follow up with a question here? You described us as a national leader, and you mentioned a lot of things that we do. If you would become president here, how would you propose continuing that effort to be a national leader? Do you see things that you could take us forward into? Because we do, as a board, want to continue our reputation as a leader in this country.
Well, I would say, and I know your last question is about the bachelor's degree programs, that is one of the areas that the entire higher ed program in the nation is beginning a transition in. And I have some information for you on that, and I was going to give it to you on the last question, but I think I'll give it to you now.
Well, Mr. Chairman, should I go ahead and ask the question 10 then?
Why not?
Okay. Let's just revert to question 10, since it is mine. And you're already commenting on it.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
I didn't get
I'll have another one of those.
I guess our real question is, are you in the same vein as us, moving forward on the four-year program, and will you support our efforts? Because you know our efforts are a little different under the law as it was passed. We have special funding for the four-year program, and we have special local control over the bachelor degree programs. We don't have to go ask somebody else. And I don't think we've abused that. I don't think the state feels that way, because they haven't taken that away from us. But are you on board with that as far as our board direction goes?
I am very much on board with it, and I'll call your attention to the first document, which is the classification description from the Carnegie classifications. And if you're familiar with those, you know that they are actually the national organization that describes what our colleges and universities are all about. And up until about a year ago, Carnegie classifications had literally one classification for two-year institutions. If you'll look on the next to the last page, you will see now this whole list of classifications for colleges that offer associate's programs. And if you'll look down the third to the last one, that is the category that St. Petersburg College falls into. And if you'll turn over to the very back page, these are the only colleges in the nation that fall into that category. These are the colleges in the nation that are leading the transition of two-year colleges into offering larger offerings for our students. This is happening not because we're trying to step on the university's toes. It's happening because the universities have chosen to cap their enrollments. Our students in our communities deserve access, affordable access, and the only way they're going to get it is if we provide it for them. And so I more than support the direction St. Petersburg has taken. I'd love to take you even further down the road. Here's where you are right now. The red on the graph is where your upper level courses fall, and I got this out of the state database and then put it into a chart for you. The blue are your lower level, your freshman and sophomore level offerings. As you can see, both are increasing, and if you continue along this path, both should continue to increase, because you'll be serving your community with what they need in the workforce.
Well, that was the whole intent of filling a vacuum here in our community for the bachelor programs, and we were able to sell that. Well, I'm glad to hear that you fully support this board's position on that.
I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you for that. Do you have any other ideas where you might tend to lead us to keep us in the forefront?
Right now, you're developing an entrepreneurial program, and you have your collaborative workspace. One of the things that's going to have to happen in Florida is that we really are going to have to open up new kinds of avenues, new kinds of jobs, and we're going to have to enable our citizens to become more entrepreneurial if we turn our economy around. You are leading the nation in that. And I don't know anywhere else in Florida where community members and students have that opportunity. So I think you ought to move rapidly, continue to move in that direction to help your economy here.
Thank you.
Thank you for being a part of this process, and thank you for the time that you spent on our campus already. We really appreciate that. The second question is, if you become president, what will you concentrate on in the first 30 days?
I thought about that question a lot, and believe it or not, your faculty and staff and students have all asked that same question too. I think it will be important to concentrate in two areas, one internally and one externally, the first 30 days. So internally, I'd like to spend time with each one of you to start with, to find out what your dreams are for this college and where you want students to be in the picture. Secondly, I'd like to spend a full day on every single campus here. What I learned the last couple of days is that it's going to take probably more than a full day to get to meet everybody on the campus and to spend some time with the students so that I can know from them the direction they would like to go in as well, so that I can properly advise you on their dreams and their vision for this community as well. Then I'd like to spend some time externally with the mayors. I've met several of them this week, city council members, chamber members. And I know that's a big picture because you have lots of communities and lots of chambers and more than one mayor. But I'd like to spend time with them, talking to them about their vision for the community's college. And then I think it's important that we spend time with legislators. And you have quite a few here, so it may take me more than the first 30 days to get to visit with each one of them, but I would like to do that as well.
Should I go on to my question?
Why don't you?
I want to join with everyone else in welcoming you here, and thank you for applying for the position of president. We certainly appreciate that. To have someone of your caliber apply is very good. And I love your title, by the way, Chief Learning Officer. That's a great title. And you have not served as a CEO, but my question really relates to the board president's relationship. And why don't you tell us what your vision of that relationship should be like, and who have served as Dr. Schugert as a mentor to you in that, and others you may try to mentor their type of leadership style in dealing with the board?
Well, both Dr. Schugert and Dr. Thomas Bourg from Kansas City, Kansas Community College have served as role models for me as how presidents should behave with boards of trustees. But I think more than that, I have been mentored over the last at least 15 years by several board members, two from Kansas City, Jody Herder and Bud Roberts, both who had chaired our board at one time or the other, and by Mrs. Jerry Buchanan at Valencia. And all three of these board members have helped me understand the difference between policy making, which is what the board does, and advising, which is what the president and the president's staff does with the board. And so I would hope to have that kind of relationship with you. And talking to the staff, I know that they want to tell you more about what they're doing with students, with enrollment, how they're doing with getting students successfully through the pipeline. So I would hope that we could begin talking to you more about that. and playing a great advisory role for you, so that as you help us set direction for the community and the college's role in the community, that we'll be able to give you great information to support your work.
Very good. As a president or as any person dealing with other folks, some people you just hit off in a relationship better than others. Here you have 5 people, not of your choosing. The governor gets to pick us, and we get a new governor. You'll probably get new trustees. So you're given these folks to work with, and how do you make sure that your relationship and in dispersing data of looking like that, my gosh, she's communicating with one board member seemingly more than another, how would you envision keeping all that in balance and keeping the relationship with each board member strong?
Well, I would hope that I would give you the information all at the same time. But if the board decides that they would prefer it be given individually, then I would hope that you would set the boundaries for that. So I would leave that up to the board, how they would like for me to do that advisory work.
And let me ask you a very specific questions about the one political issue with the board gets to deal with each year is the selection of the chair and the vice chair. What do you think the president's involvement in that selection process should be?
Nothing.
Thank you.
Mr. Gibbons, you got another question?
Yes, I'm sorry. As you know, it's the legislature, and that was a call I needed to take I'm sorry about that. My second question is that a lot of leaders have talk about their skill sets. What are your most prominent skills in your set?
I have done a lot of facilitation of leadership workshops for the Community College Academy of Leadership. And so I've taken almost every leadership test possible and am very aware of what those are and what my strengths are. But as I told some folks this morning when they asked me that question, I think the true test of that is if you ask the folks who work with you what those skills are. You really find out a lot more about yourself. And so recently one of our provosts retired, and I took her to lunch, and I asked her that question. And here's what she told me. She said, I've never worked with anyone who was as collaborative as you are. And I've also never worked with anyone who required me to participate as much as you do. But more than that, I think your greatest skill is that you listen to every single individual and you try to find their strengths and help them be successful.
Nice.
You've had a chance over these last couple of days to visit a number of our campuses. Do you know how many you went to?
8, 9, 10,
It's not
20.
more than 9, I don't believe. And you know this question. How would you go about making all of the folks, and the question's a little vague, and I'd like to get 2 answers. One is relating to the faculty, and the other is relating to the students. How would you go about making them feel valued and equal? And why don't we start with the faculty?
Interestingly enough, I have this challenge to deal with on a daily basis because at Valencia we are a large multi-campus college just like St. Petersburg is. And so what I do is I spend time each and every day on at least 1 or more campuses. I visit with faculty. I walk in their office. I sit down and I talk to them. I have reading circles with them. And in fact, I didn't bring it with me. It's in my car back at the hotel, but I was carrying them around with me earlier this week. A whole group of books that over the last year I have read with faculty. And these are books that help them understand more about their work and more about how students want to be treated, more about how they need to treat each other. And so I would spend time on every campus. I'll probably have to put myself a schedule together and make sure that I have someone helping me stick to it, so that I'm visiting with faculty, visiting with students, talking to them about what their needs are, how I can assist them, and dreaming with them about where they want to go with their students. With students, I spend a lot of time with students now, including time mentoring students, particularly those that get into academic trouble and end up in my office. So I would spend time probably in every cafeteria, and I've enjoyed food in a lot of them this week. Just having lunch with students, listening to what they have to say.
How was the food?
The food was very good.
Who picks the books?
Who picks the books? Faculty pick the books.
As far as the reading circle?
Oh, the reading circles. Usually we pick those together.
You do?
Mhm.
Very good. Thank you. You touched on this a little bit already, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about building a relationship with the faculty. How would you go about doing that?
I would want to have periodic meetings with them, and probably not just on individual campuses. I may want to find a space that's large enough to pull them all together at least twice a year to talk to them about learning that's going on with students and the challenges they're facing, and then the opportunities that they have to move their agenda forward with students. So I think you have to spend a lot of time with them and get to know them.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you.
What role have you played in fundraising for your college?
I thought about that a lot because a lot of times I don't think I play a very big role in things, because things that I do, I just seem to do them. But as I was thinking about it, I'll start with when I worked as a chief academic officer in Kansas. A faculty member came to me and said, we have a project that I would like your support, and I'd like you to help me write a grant to fund it. And it was a humanities project, a national project, to begin excavating the Underground Railroad in Wyandotte County in Kansas City, Kansas. And so I worked with Steve, we put the grant together, and we got it. And then the next thing we needed to do was, the property was owned by one of the local AME churches. And so we needed to go and work out some sort of arrangement with the church to allow us to begin to take students onto the property to excavate all of the archaeological things that were still there. And they were very excited about it when we went to talk to them. We raised money from within the community and began actually uncovering the Quindaro Ruins Project in KCK. So we raised money that way through a grant. Another project we had there that I was instrumental in developing was called the Pathways Project. And this was a project that we worked on with K through 12, particularly middle schools, as well as the University of Kansas, where we brought middle school students beginning in the 7th grade to our campus and the KU campus every summer to engage in a program with our honor students and our faculty for 2 weeks. Somebody had to pay for that because it wasn't in any of our budgets. A young woman from KU and myself went out to local businesses. We asked for the funds, and we self-supported that project the first 4 years that it was in place. It's now in everybody's budget. I worked hand in hand with the foundation board at KCK, including raising money for the Education Hall of Fame that we had there, and that was a scholarship for teachers in the area, and it was a money gift each year. So we raised money through local businesses for that. I also worked on the executive board of the chamber there, and through the executive board, I was on the finance board where we raised money for the chamber each year for all of our economic development activities. In Orlando, at Valencia, I participate in just about every foundation board event that there is. And through that, I spend time talking to donors. We kind of call it courting donors, and helping them understand what the story of our students is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dr. Walter, I get to ask the next question, and it concerns facilities. And you've been part of the Florida system for a while now, and Valencia has some beautiful facilities. I've seen your campus on Universal, which there's a lot of greenery to it, and that's a lot of land for that campus, it seems to be. And you have good signage over there, too. I noticed at Valencia,
Thank you.
I brought some of their ideas back here to St. Petersburg College on the signage. And you've toured our campuses. And we have some beautiful facilities, but we still have facility needs. In Clearwater, our library is the same library that they had in the 1960s, and it pretty much looks like the same library as the 1960s. And the Seminole campus, although it's a beautiful campus, it's in need of science labs for it to be fully comprehensive in all the classes we offer there. What is your commitment to facilities? And especially, speak of your knowledge of the Florida system and what you would do to advocate on our behalf, and especially because our college is competing with the University of Phoenix and those out there, the for-profits who are in Class A office space. So if you would talk about the importance of your philosophy towards facilities, I would appreciate hearing your remarks.
Right now, I have building for it at the Osceola campus that has been on the top of the PICO list for the last 2 years.
Oh, geez.
And I get very sad with what's happening right now with the PICO funds. I have a very strong commitment to making sure that we have not only the facilities that we need, but that our facilities are kept state-of-the-art and up to date. And you've got quite a few portable buildings on several campuses that really need to go away. So I would be committed to helping you support not only the PICO dollars, but additional dollars with legislators and local businesses to get the facilities in the shape they need to be in, and also to build more facilities to house the additional students that we continue to grow. And I think you have one campus that has grown about 35% this past semester. They're bursting at the seams.
Thank you.
Yes. What experience have you had working with the state legislature and elected officials?
Again, this was one of those questions I thought, do I do that? And I realize I do that on a day-to-day basis and have for a long time, but I just don't think about it. I do it. When I was in Kansas, Sheila Fromm, who had been the first female legislator in Kansas, when she retired, became the legislative liaison for the whole community college system there. And I worked hand in hand with her the entire time I was there. I did all the research for her statewide. I presented the research for her to the legislators, particularly to the Higher Ed Commission. And one of the things I'm most proud of is that the two of us convinced the state of Kansas not to do away with developmental education by the material that we put together, and
Very good.
particularly on the return on investment for developmental ed students. Here, I've spent a lot of time writing white papers, doing research. I spent a lot of time at political events, talking to legislators, at local events in our community. We bring legislators onto our campus at Valencia and actually host them for lectures. I get to participate in that, and most of the time get to play host to them. So I know a lot of them very well and appreciate the work that they do for our community, and I would want to do that here as well.
By the way, Bill Maloney does a nice job for Valencia up in Tallahassee.
Bill is wonderful.
I think you're up.
Well, we've already covered 10 as it was. I'd like to propose another thought. With the state of Florida's funds or its revenue going downhill, it means less for community colleges like ourselves and Valencia and the rest of them. Do you have any thoughts on how we could raise additional revenue? What do we have that we could offer to others and produce additional revenue to replace what the state is not able to provide us with?
You do have a lot of things that could make certain amounts of money, like your collaborative lab. But when you're talking about replacing revenue, you're talking about large amounts of money. And we really don't have a business big enough to bring in millions of dollars, at least at this point here. One of the things that Sandy and I have been talking about recently is tax revenue. Many other states have local mill levies and tax levies that will allow colleges at least to raise $1 million or $2 million. And I don't know if you've thought about that, but it may be a way of creating a revenue stream, at least in the interim.
We've tried that twice. Once was successful and one was a failure. But the legislature, it wasn't a permanent, it was a one-shot deal. I think one year was all we were entitled to do it, and it was like a small amount of a mill. It wasn't even a full mill. And I forget all the details, but I said, it's been tried a couple times. You have to work your legislature to get them to put a bill through like that, and then you need to sell your local community. So we've tried that twice.
In the same economic conditions that we're in today?
Well, in '78, it was during the time of the anti-tax proposition out in California, so we passed it during an anti-tax. That's when Jarvis, or whatever his name was, Howard Jarvis, was big. So.
I thought I turned it on.
And the last one, Ken, was because we failed, I think, because we had a situation with a basketball player that
That's bad press.
got a lot of bad press on it. So we have a community that I would like to think would support that, but we haven't pushed that, no, not in the last several years.
So that might be an option for you to think about, and you might have other options as well that you have thought about.
Well, we keep trying to think of ways to do that because I think it's going to take years for the state to get back to the position of the funding they had for us 3 or 4 years ago. And we're scrambling with more students on less money. And I'm sure you've had the same situation at Valencia, and I'm just looking for ideas and wondered if you had any.
Well, I have some of my own private ones. I've often thought that if we could figure out a way, and I know students ask me about the textbook costs, but if one college could figure out a way to solve that problem, with a system online. They could charge everybody in the entire country for use of that system, and it would be a whole lot cheaper than people buying books. We have the Orange Grove that's being developed, but it's being developed very slowly. So if we had an entrepreneurial college who was willing, the faculty to really put some energy into writing e-books and getting the system up and running, you might have a business that would help bring in a considerable amount of money. And there are some other ideas like that as well.
Well, that's good, because I think we're going to need that from our next president.
Dr. Walter, I have a list of your strengths and weaknesses that have been provided by your references. The list of strengths is very, very long, and I think there's only one weakness on there, which isn't even worth mentioning. But I want to just make one comment. The strengths and attributes that you have as characterized by your references are just outstanding, and we feel very fortunate that you're here. One of them that stuck out to me that I just want to make a comment on that I think maybe is a little bit unusual, but I like it. It says, Kay is a healer. She can put things back together again. And I just think that's a great character trait that I admire a lot, and I want to compliment you on that. So whoever said that about you obviously knows your character very well, and I think that's just a great tribute. The one question I did want to have on another one of your strengths is that she can make tough decisions. And can you maybe talk about one or two of the tough decisions that you've had to make in the recent past?
The allied health students asked me about that this morning, and I'm going to tell you the same story I told them, because I think it's important for a lot of reasons. We have a student who, during his final practicum in one of our allied health programs, went in to take the final, and the final had him administer drugs to one of the simulators, and he didn't bother to look at the simulator's chart before he did it, and didn't know that the simulator was allergic to the drug he was about to administer. So he administered the drug to the simulator, and the simulator went into respiratory arrest. Instead of him backing off and trying to figure out what to do or asking for help, he started injecting one other drug after the other to try to reverse what he had done to the simulator. And the simulator died. When this happened, the two faculty in charge of the class decided that the student was not ready to work as a professional in the allied health field, and told him he would have to retake the class. Well, the student didn't like that response and appealed his grade to the campus committee of faculty, who had no allied health faculty on it, who did not understand the consequences of what had happened. And so they overturned the instructor's grade to the student, and we're going to pass him. The instructor then appealed the grade to the last office who gets to deal with all the hard problems, and that was my office. I could have immediately said, I understand allied health fields because my sister's a nurse. And I know that I don't want to walk in the office with this student and have this student administer a drug to me if he doesn't know what he's doing. But I also have this great committee of faculty who have decided that this student should pass. So I had a hard decision to make, and I didn't do either one of those. Instead, what I did was call the student and call the faculty member and invite them to a meeting with me. And at the end of 6 hours straight, the three of us had a great decision. And that decision was that the student would indeed retake the course. He would have to sit out for 2 semesters because it was not going to be offered for another year. But in the interim time, I would find a scholarship to help him take science and math courses that would help him finish his bachelor's degree after he finished his allied health program. The decision was to help both the student and the faculty member and the community, and it was a win-win for everybody.
It's a great story. It's a great story. Very creative. Great, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Johnson.
Terry, since you brought up the strengths and weaknesses, I would like to go to the weakness, which is listed here.
Please. I need to know what I need to work on.
Because it's just something you haven't faced, and the weakness is you've not reported directly to a board because you've never been a president. And it's important to us that our president does get off and running, and I know you've spoken briefly about your mentors, but I'd like to have you talk a little more about your transition from your present position and your past experiences into the CEO. Because you've talked about many things about having time to visit with faculty and being on campuses and going to sitting down with students at lunchtime. And more than likely, as the president, you're not going to have that flexibility. Now, maybe you would, I don't know. So I just wanted to pursue that with you a little bit as to how you thought you might be able to transition in a way that would make us feel a little more comfortable because you've never been in this position before.
I'll start by saying that my role model does spend time with students, does show up in the cafeteria, does do all the things that I have described, and I think he is a dynamite president and well-respected in the state. It matters how you prioritize your time, and if students and if faculty and staff are a priority to you, then you will find as much time to spend with them as you do with the external constituents that you serve as well. So it's a matter of balancing your time to spend time with people who really are important. I was a faculty member, and as a faculty member, I transitioned into being a dean, and the role was very different from being in the classroom. I had role models that I watched and learned from, but I had to make the transition, and there was no way I could be a dean until I became a dean. I made the transition from being a dean to a vice president, and those roles are extremely different. As a dean, I spent a lot of my time managing things, managing enrollment, managing people. As a vice president, I have to balance my time between management and leadership and visioning. I couldn't be a vice president before I became one. Today, I can't be a president until I have the opportunity to transition into one. One of the things I know about all of you is that you are very smart and very bright, and I would hope would be able to help the new person with new ideas transition into working with you the way you want to be worked with. And so I don't think it's an issue for me. I'm ready to learn. I'm ready to hit the ground running. And I'm ready to have your advice on how to do that, as well as the advice of the wonderful people that I've spent the last 3 days with.
Thank you, very good comments.
Mr. Gibbons.
Did you have something first, Mr. Burke? I'm sorry.
Everyone has something.
Oh, I thought one of you had your hand raised.
I just want to tell you, I'm very impressed with your degrees in chemistry and teaching organic chemistry. That tells me something about you.
Thank you.
And also, I'm very impressed with your degree in theology. And I think that helps you a lot in your positions that you've held.
Thank you. I do too.
Can I, since we're on that topic, I ask a question. You earned your bachelor's degree in 81, your master's degree in 90, and your PhD in 86. Can you help me understand how that worked?
Sure. I earned my bachelor's degree in chemistry, and then I went to graduate school. It took me about 7 years to get my bachelor's degree because, like our students, I worked full-time. I didn't come from a family that had a lot of money, and I actually worked and went to school and worked and went to school until I finished that bachelor's degree. Then I went to Rice and did my PhD work. And after that, I went to the University of Texas at Austin to do postdoctoral work. While I was still at Rice, I fell in love with theology because I heard a lecture from one of our graduate faculty there, and I got really excited about what he was saying. And he invited me to audit his class. And I just have a love for people, and theological studies are about people and about people's gifts and about how to work with people and listen to people. So when I got to working on my postdoctoral work at the University of Texas, after I finished my doctorate in chemistry, I was talking to my major professor and told him that I felt like there was a piece still missing, that the work I was supposed to be doing in my life encompassed more than just chemistry. And at that point, he asked me if I had ever thought about going to seminary. And it is at that point that I embarked on seminary.
Now, is it usual, though, to be accepted into PhD program without having a master's degree?
At Rice it is, yes.
Okay. Is that a usual thing nationally? I just didn't know that. I thought usually you got your master's, then got your PhD.
It depends on the university.
So that's that's very interesting. Thanks.
Rice is a very small private institution,
With
and
a great endowment and great deal.
they do things differently there. They march to the beat of their own drum like St. Pete does.
It's a good school. Right.
Mr. Chair.
Sir.
Dr. Walter, as the president of this college, you would be the lead salesperson, and you would be out in the community doing a myriad of things all the time. But one of the things that you definitely be responsible for is to sell the college. I'd like for you to take a minute or two and think about what would be your commercial for St. Petersburg College. How would you sell St. Petersburg College? And give it to me in, a minute or less type commercial style. Whatever you think, would come to your mind, that you would sell the college to maybe, a person that would be giving a gift to the college, the legislature, or just a community member.
After the last 3 days, that's really an easy request.
All right?
I might start out with a headline that said, St. Petersburg College, the community's college. And then I would put pictures of the brilliant things that are happening on all of your campuses with your students and your faculty and your staff just flashing all over the place, because they're awesome. And if you haven't visited the campuses in a while, you need to go. I mean, you can't believe the engagement the students are having right now.
Okay. And then Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
My second question would be, in terms of student services, our number one goal is to serve students here at the college. No matter, we have a lot of things that are going on, but at the end of the day, our customer are the students. What's your feeling? What are some of the things that you are doing at Valencia College that you would see that you could bring to the table that would help us in our student services and help us to serve our students better?
We actually were talking about some of those things earlier today. We do a lot of work with helping students build the skills that they need to transition through our pathways. And I know that you have faculty that are doing that, but some of what really helps it all work is when you marry the student services part of it, the planning part of it, the advising part of it, the student success skills part of it with the curricular part. And some of what we've begun to do over the last couple of years is actually have faculty and student affairs folks working together to build curriculum that infuses those skills into our big front door classes like speech and communications, and here it would be ethics, government, those kind of classes. So really starting to connect it all together. You have the potential with all of your arts stuff to really make connections in your gen ed areas between those co-curricular activities and the learning that goes on in the classes. So start connecting those. That's the kind of stuff we're doing that I could help you with.
Mr. Bourg.
Mr. Johnston mentioned about the financial condition of the state, and most people, I think, would agree with Mr. Johnston that the next few years don't look any better. Matter of fact, there's a lot of folks projecting next year because of whatever with the state budget. There's going to be a bigger hole in the state budget. What is your philosophy on dealing with this as far as the many issues? The salary issue with staff and administrators and faculty and career staff not seeing pay raises, oftentimes being asked to do more and cutting benefits at the same time. Just your whole philosophy of dealing with an institution that's mandated to do a lot for our communities, but we're not given the resources to properly fulfill that role at times. And I would like you to touch on, because I know it's been controversial over your area when y'all cut athletics, and we have a strong athletic program here, just your whole philosophy towards those types of things.
It's an interesting question, and you should know that every campus asked that question over the last 3 days.
I'm not very original.
That wasn't what I meant. What I meant was, you're all on the same page. I really like the process that we have been using to do budgeting, particularly in the last 2 years at Valencia. And we have a very creative financial officer, as I know you do here, but he and Sandy call our financing and our budgeting process getting the foot right sized to the shoe or the boot. And so we start our budgeting process from the ground up. And we ask people to think about the things that are important to them for them to get their work done. And of course, we build this huge budget and we all turn it in January, and then we sit down and we look at it, and of course it won't be till June when we find out what our actually budget's going to look like. But we kind of have an estimate right now as to what we think it's going to be. So then we have to figure out how we get that foot to fit in that boot. And we use a process of sending the budget back and talking about what really is necessary for our work, what we can phase in or put on hold for a little while, and then we think about what we don't need to do anymore. And I know that's a really good business practice that education doesn't do very often. But we've learned to do that in these budget times. Talk about the things that we really don't need to do anymore. And we keep working at it till we get to the point where our budget fits what our budget is. During that process, we also talk about raises. And last year we did have a raise. It was like 0.9%. But together we decided that we needed the 0.9% because that helped us cover the additional health care cost. And we had a lot of staff people who worked in buildings and grounds and other places who were not going to be able to afford health insurance for their children if we didn't kick in that 0.9% increase. So we have those really hard discussions, and they're really good because what happens then is we're all making that decision, that recommendation to our Board of Trustees together. And we come away with it feeling like we've done what's best for our students and we've done what's best for each other. And in the long run, that's a really, really good thing. And so I would encourage you to think about a process like that. It keeps morale where it needs to be, and it helps people understand that regardless of what they do, they really are important in the picture of what we do for students.
You mentioned textbooks earlier. We are in the middle of trying to solve that conundrum. We've held 4 workshops around at different campuses and just trying to get our arms around a solution to make the textbooks a reasonable purchase for students. And you talked about e-books, and I know there's some efforts going on the other coast along those lines. Mm-hmm. Is Valencia taking that challenge on right now, or is it at the top of the list as far as?
We're having discussions about those same issues with textbooks on all of our campuses and with our students. And it really is a major issue. I was appalled when I looked at some material that the bookstore pulled for me, that one of our psychology books cost $300. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, you know, you might expect a high-end science book or a high-end allied health book to cost $300. But, I mean, it's ridiculous. So we have got to address that issue. We have really bright faculty all across the state who are willing to write e-books and textbooks if we just give them the time and the resources to do it. And so I think we have to get to the point where we're able to commit to them so that they can do that for us.
Other questions? Do you have any questions for us?
Has this been a very grueling process for you?
No.
It's been an incredibly great process as far as I'm concerned. Like any long process like this, you hit a couple bumps, but we've survived the bumps, and I think we have got 4 fabulous candidates to choose from. And we just feel very fortunate to be in that position, and very fortunate that you're with us today. I'm curious, did you find us, or did Dr. Hockaday find you?
I found you, but I've been watching you ever since I moved to Florida 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I am an entrepreneur and a pioneer by spirit. I come by it naturally, and so I watch what you do.
Good, good. Well, he speaks very highly of you.
Thank
So,
you.
As you know, next Tuesday, the 13th, we will be meeting at 4 o'clock to make our decision. And so we'll, of course, be in touch with you right after that meeting. And I want to, on behalf of the trustees and our college family, thank you again for applying and for being with us over these last few days. And we very much appreciate you being here.
Well, I want to thank you for this opportunity, and especially for letting me spend the last 3 days with some really wonderful people.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Amelia Carey is going to escort you wherever you're going to escort her. I'm not sure where. And we have a little business to conduct.
Is this when we get to go to the beach?
Good day for it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Great to meet you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Certainly enjoyed meeting you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All of a sudden, I looked over and you were gone. He's like, all right, thanks. Ask him the questions. Yeah, well, I guess you better take that call. Yeah. Kim, can we get Dr. Hockaday on the phone? Yeah. Dr. Hockaday?
Yes.
Hey, Terry Brett, you are live to our meeting right now. You doing okay?
Yeah, I'm doing great, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. We just finished up with Dr. Walter. It was a great interview, very impressive candidate, and the interview went very, very nicely. And we are moving on through the agenda, and we just want to talk a little bit about the process for next Tuesday.
Okay.
And what I would like to do is just offer a couple comments on some conversations that you and I have had over the last couple of weeks, and then I'm sure that some of our trustees might have a couple of questions, and then if you need to jump in at any time to offer some comment, feel free to do so. Some time ago, your recommendation was that next Tuesday we come to our meeting with our top 2 candidates. And then once those 2 have been determined, I know that Mr. Burke at our last interview, at the end of our interview, had some concerns that there was going to be ample time for some conversation and so forth, and after speaking with you, of course, that is true. Would you like to elaborate at all on that at this point?
Mr. Brett, the board, of course, can do this any way it chooses, and that's always my opener when you ask me how I feel it ought to be done. There needs to be a time to discuss the candidates that you are seriously considering. I've always been a little bit reluctant to discuss openly candidates that you know you may not consider seriously for the position. So I usually recommend to boards that they come to this meeting with their 2 top candidates, and sometimes when there are 7 or 8 people, it might be a number greater than that, but come with the 2 best candidates and then concentrate the discussion on those 2 the 2 people who emerge as the 2 top candidates. then you don't have to have discussion about people who you are not going to consider, if there are those you're not going to consider further. That's my reasoning for that. It allows discussion, but it kind of narrows discussion to people who you are seriously considering.
Very good, thank you. Questions?
Yes. I'm not sure how to phrase this, but Dr. Hockaday, I assume you can hear us too?
I can hear you, Mr. Johnston, yes.
Thank you. At this point in time, I know we have 4 very well qualified candidates, and I would love to hear the comments, as Mr. Burke brought up at our last meeting, some general conversation, because I'm not sure if I have selected yet the 2 top candidates.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wanting to get some assistance from my fellow trustees to help me decide to get down to that 2 number if we're going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think we have some very well qualified people, some that maybe I might favor a little more than others at the moment, but I'm still open to basically all 4 of them. And I'd love to see just have a general discussion, not to critique but just to get everybody's feel, because this is a big decision that we're making, and I certainly don't want to do it wrong, and I would like some input from my other 4 trustees before we even narrowed it down to the 2, if that's the direction we go. And I would think if we just could have a general discussion, it might help me.
Mr. Burke?
I agree with Mr. Johnston on this. I think, looking back at the process from the beginning, when we put together the characteristics that we wanted in a president, we probably need to revisit those, that list that we made of all the, and then we based our job description on that. And so we had that visioning session where we listed, remember, vision and this quality and this quality, and it probably would be good to remind us of what the priorities we decided on at that time. But also, I think the process has been one that's challenged us some and has educated us some. I mean, just the interviews with each of the candidates, they bring different types of temperaments, of different type of characteristics, of different types of thoughts to get us thinking more broadly about this role. And I would like to have a discussion taking what we decided already as far as the characteristics that we built our job criteria on. Looking at those again in that order we had them. Remember, we voted on those things, and some got higher order than other. And then take those and make sure that those, based on what we know now, we had the order correct. And making sure that we're still in that that's still our mindset, and also talk about other items that maybe, gosh, and I don't talk about individual candidates here, talking about the qualities that, based on what they've told us about themselves and what we've learned about them, what we think, gosh, this is an emphasis area that we want, something who's good at this type of area, then I think that will help us in deciding which of the 4 would make the best president. And I don't care if we break it down to 2, then 1, I don't, whatever we do it, that's not as important to me as to making sure we're all on board that's saying it's almost like this is the top priority of the new president. This is the second priority of the new president. It's almost that type of mentality going into this. And I'm not probably doing a good job at explaining what I'm getting at, but that's the trouble with these types of boards, that when we meet in the sunshine, you can't have those types of discussions on an ongoing basis. We only can have them here at the very visible board meeting. And I think we do have to have that type of discussion someplace. We only had it one time. We had it at the beginning when we were doing that visioning vote. Now we're at the end of the process, and I think we need to have that same, almost a little bit of that same type of process here, and that would get us in the framework to pick the best president. Because I'm with Mr. Johnston. I do not have a favorite candidate right now. But I think if we have a discussion like that, maybe I will have a favorite candidate emerge based on this type of discussion.
Yeah, because I keep looking at these 4 people that we've interviewed and saying, who can fit the role that I vision, and I hope it's all of our vision, to take this college to the next step. And I haven't put anybody's shoes in that yet. And it would be fun. I think it'd be interesting to hear, because we've got, I think, a very good board, and I know they'll help me make a decision. But I would like everybody's honest discussion, and I think, Ken, that's where you're going, and I appreciate your comments last week for that, because I think it'll help us all come together, and maybe we'll come together unanimously on an individual.
Let's go back to Mr. Burke's position for just a minute. Mr. Burke, I'm looking at the profile, the qualities and the characteristics at the moment. In fact, I had it out on my desk because if you did or did not call me this afternoon, I was going to talk to Amelia and be sure we had these reproduced so that we could discuss these characteristics again on the 13th.
Good.
Now, there's a little antsy feeling about, now if you had a candidate or two or just one candidate who you knew you were not going to consider, although apparently you do not have that, then the discussion changes some. Now, if you like all 4 candidates at the moment, the only way I know to bring that down some would be to have the discussion that you and Mr. Johnston have said. And the only way I know to do that in the Florida sunshine is just to sit down and do it. With in front of you a fresh copy of what you were looking for when you started. Then you would add to that the what you know from interviewing them. You would add to that what you know from reference checking. And then you would add to that what I think is a critical issue that Mr. Johnston mentioned is it's a matter of chemistry to some degree at this point. Now, that you won't really find on this sheet of paper. It's going to come from your gut instinct of which one of these people is going to fit what you need at St. Petersburg in your opinion. And that in your opinion is a bit subjective, and you need to know that that's legitimate. That's the way it should be. It should be a person that you, as an individual, believe you will be comfortable with as president. Now, you won't find that on a piece of paper, but maybe the other things will lead you to that. Then, the system that once you talk it through, and once you feel you're ready to vote, the method you use is kind of immaterial. I just like the narrowing down system from 4 to 2 to 1. But because I like that, that doesn't mean that's what you might want to do. Mr. Chairman, what the 2 people who have spoken have said is that they need more conversation before they're ready to come with two names, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Mr. Chair. are we
Mr. Gibbons,
suggesting that we have this
go ahead.
Are we suggesting that we have this discussion today?
No.
No.
Okay.
Well, and if that's the wish,
I thought we were.
I'm sorry?
I thought we were going to do that today.
No,
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 when
no.
are we
We're
gonna
just
do
talking
it?
about what we're going to do next Tuesday.
Before we select?
Uh-huh. Well, perhaps then, if Mr. Burke and Mr. Johnston feel that way, then perhaps what we should do next Tuesday then is to not come with the top two candidates, but rather to reevaluate the profile with all four candidates, having an open mind about all four, and then just move on to perhaps a voting process that could, at that point, be the pleasure of the board, bring it down to two and then down to one, or just go from 4 to 1.
Yeah, either way, Mr. Chairman, I have something that hangs on my, weighs on me a little bit. My term is up in May, and Mr. Gibbons is up in May. We're not going to be around probably a whole lot after May, at least our term expires. So it's the other three to my left that I'd love to hear from, because they're the ones that are going to have to live with this candidate as the president. And I want to respect their opinions, although I still will have my own, but I think they could influence me on the votes.
I certainly have an opinion, and you'll hear about it on Tuesday.
Good. That's good. That's good. I'm glad you made that statement.
No, I mean, it's, I'm just going to leave it at that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
What's also, I think, as part of this conversation that I hope that we are going to have, and thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll tell you, there was one candidate I wasn't as favorably impressed with, but then the comments that I got afterwards kind of showed me a different side, too. So, I mean, it's like, well, gosh, that's, when we say more discussion, and Dr. Hockenday used it, we have to discuss this more. We really, as a board, have not discussed this at all since the time we did that visioning session as to what the qualities are. As a board, we haven't discussed what we haven't revisited since, and how many months ago was that? That was that October?
October, November.
So we haven't discussed really this topic as a board. We've gone through a lot of processes, but we haven't had a discussion as a board as to what our qualities we're looking at, and hopefully we've matured and learned a little bit from October to today. So that's just, and I don't think it's a matter of any new qualities. That's not what I'm suggesting. It's just maybe taking those same ones, that list, and saying, hey, well, maybe this is more the important one than this one here. And that's.
And just saying, how do the candidates fit in a
Right.
general discussion?
Mr. Gibbons.
Mr. Chair, I totally agree with everything that's being said, but I remember something that you said a while ago, that if there is an honorable process, that the process will be honored. And in light of
Mr.
that,
Chairman, will you ask Mr. Gibbons to get closer to the mic?
Mr. Brett said it a long time ago, that if there was an honorable process, that the process would be honored. So in light of that, I think we should take clear direction from you, Mr. Chair, about how we should come to prepared for the next meeting. I know that you're saying that we're going to discuss it, but at some point, I think we should still be able to come to the meeting prepared with two names. And I think that's what you were saying earlier. I know you don't want to skew this process to put us in a position where we have to pick two at that particular point, but I'd like for us to have some type of process in place so that we know what we're supposed to do, as opposed to just coming in.
My recommendation was based on advice from our expert,
Okay.
who has talked from the beginning about, he felt like this, that at this point, most of us probably have an idea. If we had to pick two names, we probably could do it. And that, but I'm hearing maybe that there's a couple board members at least that don't have that feeling, and that's great. So we can. I think the idea of having the profile in front of us, as Mr. Burke said, we can go through all of those criteria that we established, all of those character traits that we're looking for, and kind of see how they line up. I think we need to be careful, though. I think we need to be careful that we focus our conversations on the positive attributes we're looking for.
Sure.
And we just need to be very careful in our public comments that we honor these individuals, and they have been very courageous and climbed out on a limb and put themselves at risk by being in this process. And I think we just need to be very, very careful in how we have this discussion. I'm all about the discussion, but we just need to be careful.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's exactly where I was going. Because it is an open meeting and the media and other folks would be there, we need to be very careful about how we proceed.
But we still need, Mr. Chairman, to get our honest thoughts out, but not in a negative way.
Absolutely, I agree. So, do we have a consensus that we will come to the meeting? We'll come to the meeting with 4 candidates. We'll come to the meeting with 4 candidates, and we'll talk about, and then, maybe at the end of that conversation, maybe we'll be comfortable to say, let's just vote on the winner. Or maybe we'll narrow it down to 2. Can we just kind of see how that conversation flows on Tuesday?
That sounds good.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Hockaday, is that all right with you?
That sounds great to me.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir, for being on the phone. We look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. Thank you again for all of your great support and guidance that you've given us from beginning to right now and through next Tuesday and beyond. We appreciate it very much.
Well, you're welcome. Will you ask Amelia to call me?